What is Pan-Africanism to you? What does being a Pan-Africanist entail? And what are your goals and your roles? Are you a Pan-African? African? Welcome back to What's Happening Africa with me, Tanya. I started this video by asking what a Pan-African is and what it entails because in doing my research, I realized most of the content that we're consuming might not be leaning towards the Pan-African narrative. Pan-African narratives demands us as Africans to prioritize us and who we are and our people. And because sometimes the media and the information we consume might not be in favor of our people all the time, this might cause us to maybe not have the most Pan-Africanist thoughts and point of views. For example, as I was discussing and researching on Niger, I realized there are two sides to the story. If you can pick it up and if you can figure out what it is, or if you have any opinions on it, please do not hesitate to comment in the comment section or on the shorter videos and on all the other platforms. With that being said, let's get right into it with concerns mounting internationally on the president's situation and welfare during this political unrest. The deposed president of Niger, Mohamed Bazoum, is reportedly facing dire conditions and dwindling supplies while under house arrest following a military coup that took place over 2 weeks ago. Bazoum's advisor revealed that the family is enduring an absence of electricity and limited food, having only rice and canned goods left. The situation has raised concerns about his health, safety, and the overall crisis in Niger. The United States and other allies are deeply concerned about the president. Multiple journalists and publications are reporting on the actual feelings of the people in Niger. A few rallies have been caught and recorded in the streets where the people of Niger are asking all other international and foreign aid and parties from being in the country, claiming that they are stealing their resources. With this update, several other nations in Africa are siding with Niger. Although the ECOWAS deadline is still set and sanctions are still being applied to Niger, there is a lot of unrest amongst the people and not only amongst the leaders, where the people are demanding a more Pan-Africanist point of view of this coup. On an international scale, a lot of Western allies and countries are terrified of this coup, not because of the threat it has to democracy, but journalists are stating that this coup is going to shake the foundations of French colonization and colonization in Africa in general. Did you know that the roots of colonization are still very much present in our nation, with most of our natural resources constantly being exported to these developed countries? This now begs the question of the priorities of the people in Niger. Is it democracy and going back to normalcy? Or is it liberal and economic freedom from the Western allies or individuals who come into the country to get their natural resources? I am going to leave that conversation up to you, and I hope that we can continue this conversation in the comment section and on other social media platforms. Moving down to Southern Africa, I'm sad to report that the Cape Town taxi strikes have led to deaths. The ongoing 2023 Western Cape taxi strike in South Africa, led by the South African National Taxi Council, SANTACO, has escalated into a violent clash between minibus taxi operators and law enforcement authorities. The strike, which started on the 3rd of August, was set to end after 7 days on the 10th of August, but the strike still continues to this day. SANTACO has announced that they're extending it indefinitely until the city of Cape Town meets their demands. The strike has sadly resulted in the death of 5 people and violence being spread out on the streets. The strike was initiated in response to what drivers described as heavy-handed tactics by law enforcement, including the impounding of vehicles for minor offenses like not wearing a seatbelt. Protesters have accused the government of unfairly targeting taxis and impounding vehicles they claim roadworthy. South Africa's Transport Minister, Sindisiwe Chikunga, ordered the immediate release of the impounded minibuses, stating that the city had incorrectly executed and implemented legislation. Despite the calls for cooperation and discussions, the strike continues, affecting daily living and the school day for children and workers in Cape Town. This dispute has also led to political discussions and argument between the African National Congress (ANC) and the Democratic Alliance (DA). Whilst the negotiations are still ongoing, the strike is continuing, and we hope that eventually an in-between peaceful resolution is reached sooner rather than later. In Zambia, the opposition party leader has been charged with libel due to social media posts. Fred Mambe, leader of the Zambian opposition Socialist Party, has been charged with libel and released on bail following a series of continuous social media posts. The charges stem from Mr. Mambe's online remarks, which the police chief, Graffel Musamba, claimed bordered on inciting civil disobedience against the government. The police chief expressed concern over Mambe's reference to military juntas in West Africa, interpreting it as a potentially destabilizing factor in the country's peaceful environment. While Mambe denies allegations and asserts his commitment to continue issuing statements online, he reported that law enforcement agencies have been authorized to seize his electronic devices, including phone and laptops. He criticized this action as a primitive policing technique and called for a more legal and cooperative approach from the authorities. Membe is a journalist turned politician who was previously the owner of a controversial paper called The Post, which was liquidated in 2016. The charges and controversy surrounding his social media posts has fueled political tensions in Zambia. In Somalia, where political tensions are already at a high level, unfortunately, a passenger bus was bombed and at least 6 fatalities were recorded. A passenger bus traveling in the Lower Shabelle region outside Somalia's capital, Mogadishu, was targeted in a deadly explosion, resulting in at least 6 fatalities and 12 injuries, according to the Somalia news agency. No organization has claimed responsibility for the attack thus far. In the past, the Al-Qaeda-linked militant group Al-Shabaab has taken responsibility for similar attacks. Despite similar counter-offenses by the government and its allies, Al-Shabaab continues to make similar attacks in Somalia and in their allied and neighboring countries. The group's actions have raised significant concerns about security in this region. But fortunately, efforts to counter these extremist groups continue, and we hope that we get to the bottom of who caused these unfortunate deaths in Somalia. Moving to Kenya, where we have an update on the political unrest in the nation, talks are finally on the table and are happening as we speak. Kenya's government and the opposition have initiated fresh talks aimed at resolving a bitter political dispute triggered by violent protests over the high cost of living and demands for electoral reforms. The ongoing unrest has prompted concern both domestically and internationally, calling for a mediation to resolve this deadlock. The talks are being held at the Bomas of Kenya, a tourist site in Nairobi, and will be facilitated by a 10-member joint committee. The exact agenda and duration of the talks are still under debate. Odinga's coalition aims to discuss not only electoral reforms, but also the rising cost of living. However, an earlier draft agenda excludes economic concerns and recent tax hikes, which, if you were there in the previous updates, was the actual trigger of the political unrest and protests. This is why a lot of Kenyans are frustrated by this drafted agenda, and we hope that the new updated agenda addresses the concerns of the people of Kenya, who are the actual priority in this unrest. The history of Kenyan politics has seen similar dialogues, such as the handshake between Odinga and former President Uhuru Kenyatta in 2018, which led to a truce. While both the government and opposition have stated that they are not interested in power sharing, Odinga warned that if an agreement isn't reached within 30 days, alternative actions could be taken. With the inflation rate rising and the Kenyan people demanding a proper way of living, We hope that these discussions lead to a more peaceful resolution as the one that resulted in 2018. Today's news was a little heavy, but we're coming at you with a more lighthearted and joyful news update with the World Cup that is happening in South Africa right now. Today, I want to get into the recently completed 16th edition of the World Netball Cup, which, my mistake, they actually finished and the results are out, but it is bringing a lot of positive light on the African teams. The recently concluded 16th edition of the Netball World Cup held in Cape Town has ignited hopes for the expansion of netball in South Africa and across the continent. The tournament, hosted in Africa for the first time, received accolades for its energy, joy, and vibrant atmosphere, with the commercial success marked by a strong combination of sponsorship and international broadcast sales. Dame Liz Nicole, president of World Netball, emphasized the uniqueness of each World Cup and lauded the enthusiastic support from South Africa. South African President Cyril Ramaphosa pledged further support for netball's growth. On the court, 4 African nations participated, namely South Africa, Malawi, Zimbabwe, and Uganda, and they showed how amazing and resilient and powerful the African teams were. The Netball World Cup is showing to be a catalyst for netball in the continent and for women's sport in general, combined with the efforts and the results that are coming out from the Soccer Women's World Cup. We're so excited to see the progress that women are having in sport and the recognition they deserve, especially in the African continent. Thank you so much for watching What's Happening in Africa with me, Tanya. Please do not forget to like, subscribe, follow the channel, share it with your friends and colleagues. Let's start a conversation about Pan-Africanism, because I really want to get into that. As an African, you need to understand fully what it means and what your point of views and actions lead to. Thank you, have a lovely weekend, and have a great day. Goodbye.